Hello again, everyone. This is Elisa at Gosho Readings by Elisa. Today is a cold January day, 2023, and I'm going to be sharing a reading of the Gosho Letter from Sado. Letter from Sado can be found in the old collection of English translated Goshos, volumes 1 through 8, can be found in volume 1, page 333 through, let's see, 342. And then you have the background. So I'm going to read from the older version so I can challenge myself with the Japanese names. And then when I can, I will give you the English translation from the more contemporary translation of these Goshos. They have all the old-fashioned foreign-sounding names translated into English. So some people are used to that. I'm not, because I read the old names for so many years. But when I can, I'll try to give you both. What I'd like to do, however, is to read you the background from the newer version. So I can find that. Here we go. This letter was written on the 20th day of the 3rd month, 1272, some 5 months after Nichiren Daishonin had arrived on the island of Sado to begin his exile there. He addressed it to Toki Jonin, a samurai serving as a leading retainer to Lord Chiba, the constable of Shimosa province, to Saburo Simon, or Shijo Kingo, in Kamakura, and to other staunch followers. Nichiren Daishonin had been banished on the 10th day of the 10th month, 1271. Charges of treason had been brought against him by Ryokan, the chief priest of Gokurakuji Temple in Kamakura, and by Heino Simon, the deputy chief of the Office of Military and Police Affairs. Heino Simon was resolved to execute the Daishonin at Tatsunokuchi before he was to be delivered to the custody of Homma Shigetsura, the deputy constable of Sado. The attempt at execution was unsuccessful, however, and after a delay of almost a month, Homma's warriors escorted the Daishonin to the coast of the Sea of Japan. After a delay there caused by bad weather, the Daishonin finally arrived on Sado on the 28th day of the 10th month. Nichiren Daishonin was housed at first in a dilapidated structure known as Samai-do, where he lived exposed to the wind and snow that blew in through gaps in the roof and walls. After 5 months, he was able to move to more comfortable quarters at Ichinosawa. The Daishonin engaged in debates with Pure Land and other priests and actively propagated his own teachings. While on Sado, he wrote 2 major treatises, The Opening of the Eyes and The Object of Devotion for Observing the Mind. In the 2nd month, 1274, the Daishonin was pardoned and returned to Kamakura on the 26th day of the 3rd month. In this writing, the Daishonin first states that the only way to attain Buddhahood is to be willing to offer one's life, one's most precious possession, to Buddhism. Next, he says that the method of propagation known as shakabuku is appropriate to this age, and that one can attain Buddhahood only by dedicating oneself to it. He then declares that he is the, quote, pillar, sun, moon, mirror, and eyes, unquote, of, and, quote, father and mother, unquote, to the country. These are symbolic references to the Buddha of the latter day of the law, who is perfectly endowed with the three virtues of parent, teacher, and sovereign. He also mentions in his earlier prophecies on establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land, also known as the Risho Ankokuran, concerning political upheaval and violent feuds within the country. Lastly, he gives an elaborate explanation of karma or destiny, stating that his present difficulties arise from the fact that he slandered the Lotus Sutra in a past existence. Using himself as an example, he elucidates to his disciples the kind of spirit and practice by which they can alter their karma. He adds that persons who try to propagate the correct teaching of Buddhism vigorously will invariably face opposition, and that such opposition in reality presents an opportunity for them to change their karma. Those who have given up their faith and instead criticize are admonished that their actions bear the heaviest consequences. He compares their lack of vision to fireflies who laugh at the sun. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the beginning of the Gosho, and I'm going to read from the, I guess it was originally published in 79. Yeah, first edition was 1979. And that's the version I am reading from. Here we go. This letter is addressed to Toki Jonin. It should also be shown to Shijo Kingo, Tonotsuji Juro, Saijiki no Ama, and my other disciples. Send me the names of those killed in the battle at Kyoto and Kamakura. Also, please have those who are coming here bring me the Getten Show, which in English is known as an anthology of non-Buddhist texts. And then he also requests volume 2 of the Hokke Mongu, which is the words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra, and volume 4 of the Hokke Gengi, which is the profound meaning of the Lotus Sutra, as well as the commentary on that report, commentary on the volume, and as well as the collected imperial reports and edits. Edicts. Nichiren continues, the most dreadful things in the world are the pain of fire, the flashing of swords, and the shadow of death. Even horses and cattle fear being killed. No wonder human beings are afraid of death. Even a leper clings to life. No wonder a healthy person struggles to live. The Buddha taught that offering one's little finger for the sutra is more rewarding than covering an entire galaxy with 7 kinds of jewels. That comes from the Lotus Sutra, chapter 23. Sesen Doji offered his life, and Gyobo Bonji ripped off his own skin to seek the truth of Buddhism. You will know their names as the boy Snow Mountains, who's Sesen Doji, and the ascetic aspiration for the law, who was called Gyobo Bonji. Since nothing is more precious than life itself, those who dedicate their lives to the Buddhist practice are certain to attain Buddhahood. If they are prepared to offer their lives, why should they begrudge any other treasure for the sake of Buddhism? On the other hand, if one is loath to part with his material possessions, how can he possibly give away his life, which is far more valuable? Society dictates that one should repay a great obligation to another, even at the cost of his life. Many warriors die for their lords, perhaps many more than one would imagine. A man will die to defend his honor. A woman will die for a man. Fish want to survive. They deplore their pond's shallowness and dig holes to hide in, yet tricked by bait, they take the hook. Birds in a tree fear that they are too low and perch in the top branches, yet bewitched by bait, they too are caught in snares. Human beings are equally vulnerable. They give their lives for shallow, worldly matters, but rarely for the noble cause of Buddhism. Small wonder they do not attain Buddhahood. Buddhism should be spread by the method of either shoju or shakabuku, depending upon the age. These are analogous to the two worldly arts of the pen and the sword. The bodhisattvas of old practiced the law as befitted the times. Sesen Doji offered his own body when told that he would be taught the law in return. Prince Satta gave his own flesh and blood to carry out his bodhisattva practice. But should one sacrifice his life at a time when it is not required? In an age when there is no paper, one should use his own skin. In an age when there are no pens, one should use his own bones. In an age when society accepts the true law and honors the precepts while denouncing those who break or ignore them, one should strictly follow them all. In an age when Confucianism or Taoism is used to assail Buddhism, one should risk his life to debate with the emperor, as did the priests Tao An, Yui Yuan, and Fa Tao. And the footnote about these people says, Tao An, there's not sure about the dates, but Hui Yuan lived from 523 to 592, and Fa Tao from 1086 to 1147. And they were priests who had dedicated their lives to propagating Buddhism. Gosho continues, in an age when people confuse Hinayana and Mahayana, provisional and true teachings, or exoteric and esoteric doctrines, as though unable to distinguish gems from pebbles or cow's milk from ass's milk, one should strictly differentiate between them, following the example of the great teachers Chentai and Dengyo. It is the nature of beasts to threaten the weak and fear the strong. Our contemporary scholars are just like them. They despise a wise man without power, but fear the evil rulers. They are merely servile courtiers. Only by defeating a powerful enemy can one prove his real strength. When an evil ruler in consort with heretical priests tries to destroy true Buddhism and banish a man of wisdom, those with the heart of a lion will surely attain Buddhahood, as Nichiren did. I say this not out of arrogance, but because I am committed to true Buddhism. An arrogant man will be overcome with fear when he meets a strong enemy, just like the haughty Ashura, who shrank and hid himself in a lotus flower, blossoming in Munechi Lake, even when reproached by Taishaku. I'm going to say that one just again. It's a long sentence and I messed it up. An arrogant man will be overcome with fear when he meets a strong enemy, just like the haughty Ashura, who shrank and hid himself in a lotus flower blossoming in Munechi Lake when reproached by Taishaku. And Taishaku is one of those Buddhist gods. I don't know if they have a particular name for him that's translated somewhere. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, the more contemporary version calls the lake heat-free lake. And Taishaku is known as chakra. I don't know what the difference is, but I guess just a different language. All right. Back to the Gosho. Even a word or phrase of true Buddhism will lead one to the path of enlightenment if it suits the times and the capacity of the people. Even though one may study 1,000 sutras and 10,000 doctrines, he cannot attain Buddhahood should those teachings not fit the times and the people's capacity. Now, 26 years since the Battle of Hoji, which was waged in 1247 between the Hojo and the Miura clans for control of the regency, and the Hojo clan won. So it's been 26 years since then. Gosho continues, the Kamakura government is again plagued by internal strife. Rebellions have already broken out twice on the 11th and 17th day of the second month of this year. So a footnote says these rebellions were instigated by Tojo Tokisuke, an influential commissioner in Kyoto, who attempted to overthrow his half-brother, Regent Hojo Tokimuni. Family strife, I'll tell you. Okay, back to the Gosho. Yeah, so those rebellions had taken place. Neither non-Buddhists nor the enemies of Buddhism can destroy the Buddha's true law. Neither non-Buddhists nor the enemies of Buddhism can destroy the Buddha's true law, but the Buddha's disciples definitely can. And I always think that's a very important statement by Nichiren for us all to remember. As the sutra says, a parasite in the lion's bowels will devour the lion. A man of great fortune cannot be ruined by his enemies, but only by those close to him. The current rebellion is what the Yakushi Sutra means by the disaster of internal strife. And the Yakushi Sutra, I think that's the Medicine Master Sutra is what they call it now. And then the Ninno Sutra states, Ninno Sutra would be the Benevolent King's Sutra, states, when the sage departs, the 7 types of calamity will invariably arise. The Konkomyo Sutra states, Konkomyo Sutra would be the Golden Light Sutra. And it states, quote, the 33 heavenly gods become furious because the king permits evil to run rampant, unquote. Although Nichiren is not a sage, he is equal to one, for he embraces the Lotus Sutra exactly as the Buddha taught. Furthermore, since he has long understood the ways of the world, all the prophecies he wrote have come true without exception. Therefore, you should not doubt what he has told you concerning your future existence. Nichiren is the pillar, sun, moon, mirror, and eyes of the ruling clan of Kanto. On the 12th day of the 9th month of last year, when I was arrested, I boldly declared that if the country should lose Nichiren, the 7 disasters would occur without fail. Didn't this prophecy come true just 60 and then 150 days later? And those battles were only the first signs. What lamenting there will be when the full effect appears. By the way, when he talks about the ruling clan of Kanto here, he's referring to Kamakura. People foolishly wonder why Nichiren is persecuted by the government if he is truly a wise man. Yet it is all just as I expected. King Ajatashattra killed his father and nearly murdered his mother, for which he was hailed by the 6 royal ministers. When Devadatta killed an arhat and shed the Buddha's blood, Kokalika and others were delighted. Nichiren is father and mother to the ruling clan and is like a Buddha or an arhat to this age. So let me get you a few translations of those names if they have them. King Ajatashattu, Kokalika. Okay, they have not translated those. Okay. Continuing, the sovereign and his subjects who rejoice at his exile are truly the most shameless of all. So I'll read those 2 lines again. Nichiren is father and mother to the ruling clan and is like a Buddha or an arhat to this age. The sovereign and his subjects who rejoice at his exile are truly the most shameless of all. Those heretical priests who have been bewailing the exposure of their errors may be overjoyed for the moment, but eventually they will suffer no less than Nichiren and his disciples. Their joy is like Fujiwara Yasuhira's when he killed his brother, and Minamoto no Shitsune. And so this says about that. Fujiwara Yasuhira, who died in 1189. He was the son of Fujiwara Hidehira, who was the lord of the province of Mutsu in northeastern Japan. He killed his brother and usurped power for himself. Minamoto no Yoritomo, the Kamakura shogun, ordered him to kill Yoshitsune, Yoritomo's brother, which he did to prove his loyalty. Later, however, Yoritomo had him executed to consolidate his own power in the northern part of Japan. A little what goes around comes around happening there. So Nichiren continues, the devil who shall destroy the ruling clan has already entered the country. This is the meaning of the passage from the Lotus Sutra, which reads, the devil enters one's body. It's from chapter 13 of Lotus Sutra. The persecutions Nichiren has faced are the result of karma formed in previous lifetimes. The Fukyu chapter states, and there's another name for that in English. That would be the never disparaging chapter. Fukyo chapter, okay, Bodhisattva Fukyo. The Fukyo chapter states, quote, after expiating his sins, unquote, indicating that Bodhisattva Fukyo was vilified and beaten by countless slanderers because of his past karma. So too it is with Nichiren, who in this life was born poor and lowly to a Chandala family. And Chandala, I believe it's a low caste in society, usually dealing with dead animals. What does it say? Those whose professions require them to kill living creatures. And his family was fishermen. In my heart, I cherish some faith in the Lotus Sutra, but my body, while outwardly human, is fundamentally that of an animal, which once subsisted on fish and fowl, and was conceived of the male and female fluids. My spirit dwells in this body, like the moon reflected in a muddy pond, or gold wrapped in a filthy bag. Since my heart believes in the Lotus Sutra, I do not fear even Banten or Taishaku, but my body is still that of an animal. So Banten and Taishaku are more contemporarily named Brahma and Chakra. With such disparity between my body and my mind, no wonder the foolish despise me. Without doubt, when compared to my body, my mind shines like the moon or like gold. Who knows what slander I may have committed in the past? I may possess the soul of priest Shoi or the spirit of Mahadeva. And so Shoi was said to have fallen into hell alive for slandering a bodhisattva Kikon who had propagated Buddhism. And Mahadeva was a Brahmin born after Shakyamuni is said to have committed 3 of the 5 cardinal sins, killing his father, mother, and an arhat. He repented and joined the priesthood, but broke the unity of believers by corrupting orthodox teachings with his own misconceptions. Nichiren continues, maybe I am descended from those who contemptuously persecuted Bodhisattva Fukyo, or am among those who forgot their original faith in the Lotus Sutra. I may even be related to the 5,000 arrogant people who would not remain to hear the sutra, or belong to the 3rd and lowest group of Daitsu Buddha's disciples. So those 5,000 arrogant people, these were priests, nuns, laymen, and lay women who thought they had already mastered Buddhism and left the assembly as Shakyamuni began to expound the Lotus Sutra. Bummer, they missed the best part. But seriously, kind of bad karma. All right, and this Daitsu guy, Daitsu Buddhist disciples, it's from another, what does it say? Oh, refers to past Buddha and a long time ago, I believe. But anyway, it's not that important. Continuing from Nichiren's Gosho, it is impossible to fathom one's karma. It is impossible to fathom one's karma. Iron, when heated in the flames and pounded, becomes a fine sword. Wise men and saints are tested by abuse. My present exile is not because of any crime. It is solely so that I may expiate in this lifetime my past heavy slanders and be freed from the 3 evil paths in the next. The Hatsunayan Sutra states, quote, in the coming age, there will be those who enter the priesthood, don surplices, and make a show of studying my teachings. However, being neither diligent nor serious about their practice, they will slander the Mahayana Sutras. You should be aware that these people are the ones who are following the heretical religions of today, unquote. That Hatsunayan Sutra, I think, is called more contemporarily the Parinirvana Sutra. Continuing the Gosho, those who read this passage should reflect deeply on their own practice. So again, that quote is, quote, in the coming age, there will be those who enter the priesthood, don surplices, and make a show of studying my teachings. However, being neither diligent nor serious about their practice, they will slander the Mahayana Sutras. You should be aware that these people are the ones who are following the heretical religions of today, unquote. Those who read this passage should reflect deeply on their own practice. The Buddha is saying that those of our contemporary priests who are lazy and remiss were disciples of the 6 non-Buddhist teachers in Shakyamuni's day. The followers of Honen, who call themselves the Nembutsu sect, not only turn people away from the Lotus Sutra, telling them to, quote, discard, close, ignore, and abandon it, but advocate chanting only the name of Amida, a Buddha described in the provisional teachings. The followers of Dainichi, known as the Zen sect, claim that the true teachings of Buddhism have been transmitted apart from the sutras. They ridicule the Lotus Sutra as nothing more than a finger pointing to the moon or a meaningless string of words. These priests were certainly followers of the 6 non-Buddhist teachings, only now they have entered the stream of Buddhism. According to the Nirvana Sutra, the Buddha had enabled everyone to attain enlightenment by teaching the Juryo chapter of the Lotus Sutra. According to the Nirvana Sutra, the Buddha had enabled everyone to attain enlightenment by teaching the Juryo chapter of the Lotus Sutra. Juryo chapter, I believe, is the 16th. It's the one, Jiga Tokubo Raisho, that one. Yet alas, when he illuminated the 136 hells underground, instead of finding them empty, he saw that the slanderers of Buddhism, who were people of incorrigible disbelief, were still being confined there by the guards of hell. They proliferated until they became the people of Japan today. And of course, we're back in the 1200s when he says today, right? Literally speaking. Since Nichiren himself committed slander in the past, he became a Nembutsu priest in this lifetime. And for several years, he also laughed at those who practiced the Lotus Sutra, saying, quote, not a single person has ever attained Buddhahood through that sutra, unquote. Or, quote, not one person in 1,000 can reach enlightenment through its teachings, unquote. These are from different writings that are quoted, that are footnoted. Awakening from my slanderous condition, I feel like a drunken son who, in his stupor, strikes his parents but thinks nothing of it. When he returns to his senses, he regrets it bitterly, but to no avail. His offense is extremely difficult to erase. Even more so are past slanders of the law, which stain the depths of one's heart. A sutra states that both the crow's blackness and the heron's whiteness are actually the deep stains of their past karma. And that's the Ryogan Sutra. I don't know what they call it these days. If I figure it out, I'll tell you. The Brahmins and other non-Buddhists refused to recognize this causality and claimed it was the work of nature. And today, when I expose people's slanders in an effort to save them, they deny it with every excuse possible and argue back with Honen's words about barring the gates to the Lotus Sutra. From Nembutsu believers, this is scarcely surprising, but even the Tendai and Shingon priests actively support them. On the 16th and 17th day of the first month of this year, hundreds of priests and believers from the Nembutsu and other sects came to debate with Nichiren. Representing the Nembutsu sect, Inshobo said, quote, Saint Honen did not instruct us to discard the Lotus Sutra. He simply wrote that everyone should chant the Nembutsu, and its great blessings will assure their ascension to the Pure Land. Even the Tendai priests of Onjoji and Enrakuji temples, exiled to this land, praise Saint Honen and say how excellent his teaching is. How do you dare try to refute it, unquote. The local priests are even more ignorant than their counterparts in Kamakura. They are absolutely pitiful. And there's a footnote here about Onjoji and Enryakuji. Onjoji is also called Miidera Temple near Kyoto, and it became the headquarters of the Jimmon school of the Tendai sect in 993, when Krisho's latter-day disciples left and Rakuji Temple, situated on Mount Hiei. And Rakuji then became the main temple of the Samon school of the Tendai sect, for those of you who like details. Back to the Gosho. How terrible are the slanders Nichiren committed in his past and present existences. Since you have been born into this evil country and become the disciple of such a man, there is no telling what you may have to endure. The Hatsunayon Sutras reads, quote, "Men of devout faith, because you committed countless sins and accumulated much evil karma in the past, you must expect to suffer retribution for everything you have done. You may be reviled, cursed with an ugly appearance, be poorly clad and poorly fed, seek wealth in vain, be born to an impoverished or heretical family, or be persecuted by your sovereign," unquote. It further states, quote, "It is due to the blessings obtained by protecting the law that one can diminish in this lifetime his suffering and retribution," unquote. Were it not for Nichiren, these passages from the sutra would virtually make the Buddha a liar. For none save Nichiren have experienced all 8 sufferings described in the sutra: to be slighted, to possess an ugly physical form, to lack clothing, to lack food, to seek wealth in vain, to be born to a poor family, to be born to a heretical family, and 8, to be persecuted by one's sovereign. One who climbs a high mountain must eventually descend. One who slights another will in turn be despised. One who deprecates those of handsome appearance will be born ugly. One who robs another of food and clothing is sure to fall into the world of hunger. One who mocks noble men or anyone who observes the precepts will be born to a poor family. One who slanders a family that embraces the true law will be born to a heretical family. One who laughs at those who cherish the precepts will be born a commoner and meet with persecution from his sovereign. This is the general law of cause and effect. Nichiren's sufferings, however, are not ascribable to this causal law. In the past, he despised the votaries of the Lotus Sutra and ridiculed the sutra itself, sometimes with exaggerated praise and other times with contempt. He has met all 8 of these terrible sufferings for such acts against the Lotus Sutra, which is as magnificent as 2 jewels combined, 2 moons shining side by side, 2 stars conjoined, or one Mount Hua placed atop another. Hua is one of the 5 highest mountains in China. Usually these sufferings would torment a person over many lifetimes, appearing one at a time. But Nichiren has denounced the enemies of the Lotus Sutra so severely that all 8 descended upon him at once. His situation is like that of a peasant heavily in debt to his lord and others. As long as he remains on the estate, they are likely to defer his debts from one year to the next, rather than mercilessly hounding him. But as soon as he tries to leave, everyone will rush over and demand that he repay everything at once. Thus the sutra states, quote, "It is due to the blessings obtained by protecting the law that one can diminish his suffering and retribution," unquote. And that's from the Lotus Sutra, I believe. The Lotus Sutra reads, quote, "There are many ignorant people who will vilify and attack us, the votaries of the Lotus Sutra, with swords, staves, and stones. They will denounce us to the sovereign, ministers, Brahmins, and other influential men. We will be banished again and again." That's from the Lotus Sutra, chapter 13. Without hell's guards to torment them, slanderers could never emerge from hell. Were it not for the authorities who now persecute Nichiren, he could not expiate his past sin of slandering the law. Nichiren is like Bodhisattva Fukyo, who lived in ages past, and the people of this day are like the priests, nuns, and lay men and women who disdained and persecuted Fukyo. The people are different, yet the cause is the same. Different people may kill their parents, but they all fall into the same hell of incessant suffering. Since Nichiren is making the same cause as Fukyo, he is certain to become a Buddha equal to Shakyamuni. Moreover, those who now persecute him are like Bhadrapala, who was a central figure in the persecution of Bodhisattva Fukyo, and the others who persecuted Fukyo. And Bhadrapala suffered in an endless hell. This footnote says, they will be tortured in the depths of hell for 1,000 eons. I therefore pity them deeply and wonder what can be done for them. Those who are at first disdained and persecuted, those who at first disdained and persecuted Fukyo later took faith in his teachings and became his followers. The greater part of their slander was thus expiated. But even the small part which remained caused them to suffer as terribly as one who had killed his parents 1,000 times over. That's pretty bad. That's heavy retribution, right? They turned around and embraced Bodhisattva Fukyo's teachings, realized they'd made a mistake, and that got rid of most of their bad causes. But what was left still was as bad, as caused them to suffer as terribly as one who had killed his parents 1,000 times over. Whew. The people of this age refuse to repent at all, and must therefore suffer for interminable eons, as described in the Hiyu chapter, perhaps even for the duration of Sanzen or Gohyaku Jintengo. There are also those who appear to believe in Nichiren, but began doubting when they saw him persecuted. They have not only forsaken the Lotus Sutra, but actually think themselves wise enough to instruct Nichiren. The pitiful thing is that these perverse people must suffer in the depths of hell even longer than the Nembutsu believers. Ashura contended that the Buddha had only 18 sensory functions, but that he himself had 19. Brahmas claimed that the Buddha offered only one way to enlightenment, but that they had 95. In the same way, the renegade disciples say that although priest Nichiren is their teacher, he is too rigid, and they will spread the Lotus Sutra in a more flexible way. In so asserting, they are being as ridiculous as fireflies laughing at the sun and moon. An anthill belittling Mount Hua, small inlets despising the boundless sea, or a magpie mocking the Chinese phoenix. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo Nichiren, the 20th day of the 3rd month in the 9th year of Bun-e, 1272. And he has a postscript. There is very little writing paper here in the province of Sado, and to write to you individually would take too long. However, if even one person fails to hear from me, it will cause resentment. Therefore, I want all sincere believers to meet and read this letter together for encouragement. When disaster strikes, our personal troubles seem insignificant. I do not know how accurate the reports reaching me are, but there must surely be intense grieving over those killed in the recent battles. What has become of Izawa no Nyudo and Sakabe no Nyudo? These were apparently loyal followers of the Daishonin in Kamakura, but little is known about them. Send me news of Kawanobe, Yamashiro, Tokujoji, and the others. And these were also followers of the Daishonin, believed to have been imprisoned in an underground cell following the Tatsunokuchi persecution. Also, please be kind enough to send me the essentials of government in the Chen Quan era, the Anthology of Tales, and the Esoteric Teachings of the Eight Sects. Without these, I cannot even write letters. So those three writings, Essentials of Government in the Chen Quan Era, 627 to 649, was written by Wu Qing during the Tang Dynasty in China and discusses political matters between the emperor and his subjects. The Anthology of Tales is a collection of non-Buddhist literature. Little is known about it. And the Esoteric Teachings of the Eight Sects is esoteric doctrines of the 8 major Buddhist sects in medieval Japan, which were Kusha, Jojitsu, Ritsu, Hosso, Sanron, Kegon, Shingon, and Tendai. So I read you the background to this Gosho from the online version or the more contemporary translation. And now I will read you the background from the older book, which I've been reading to you from. The letter from Sado was written on March 20th, 1272, nearly 6 months after the Daishonin's exile began. He was writing to Toki Jonin and other disciples. First, he states that the direct path to enlightenment is the consecration of one's life, the most precious possession, to Buddhism. Next, he says that the method of propagation, known as shakubuku, is appropriate to this age, and that one can attain Buddhahood only by dedicating himself to it wholeheartedly. He then declares that he is the pillar, sun, moon, mirror, and eyes of the country. These are symbolic references to the 3 virtues of the Buddha, those of parent, teacher, and sovereign. He mentions his earlier prophecies in the Rishoan Kokuran, which is Rishoan Kokuran. Okay, what's Rishoan Kokuran? The English version of that title is not the opening of the eyes. On securing the peace of the land, the propagation of true Buddhism, right? Rishoan Kokuran. Sorry about that. So where were we? Yes, he mentions his earlier prophecies in the Rishoan Kokuran concerning political upheaval and violent feuds within the country. You can see why I prefer the old Japanese untranslated titles, because I have them memorized and I don't have the English ones memorized. So I apologize for the delay and the stalling and appreciate your patience. Completing the background here, it is written, lastly, he gives an elaborate lesson on karma or destiny, stating that his present difficulties result from the fact that he slandered the Lotus Sutra in a past existence. Though in terms of his identity of the original Buddha, he was guilty of no such slander. He uses himself as an example to show the loss that results from evil causes and to show his disciples how they can alter their karma. He adds that persons who strenuously try to propagate Buddhism will invariably face opposition, and that such opposition in reality presents an opportunity to change their destiny. Those who gave up their faith are admonished that their actions bear the heaviest consequences. He compares their lack of vision to fireflies who laugh at the sun. Okay, and I just want to look, I'll look at the end here and see if there's any difference in the translation that you need to know about. Yeah, so I guess karma is a lot of it. So this is a little bit interesting in this older translation, of course, came from the Nichiren Shoshu International Center. So there may have been a little more connection with priesthood at that time. Though it was, to my understanding, all the translations and stuff were done by Gakkai members. But in the more recent translation and background, it says that lastly, Nichiren gives an elaborate explanation of karma or destiny, stating that his present difficulties arise from the fact that he slandered the Lotus Sutra in a past existence. Using himself as an example, he elucidates to his disciples a kind of spirit and practice by which they can alter their karma. And if you notice, the one from the older book said, of course, due to his identity as the original Buddha, he was guilty of no such slander. So it's interesting to note the difference that these two backgrounds offer. An older background, background written much longer ago than the one from the Soka Gakkai Nichiren Buddhism Library, Writings of Nichiren Daishonin. And sometimes when you'll hear in the Soka Gakkai or SGI meetings about, well, why do you have this bad karma? Why do we have bad karma? And they say, well, sometimes you made the bad karma by making bad causes, which is what Nichiren Daishonin is talking about here, that very serious bad karma from abandoning your faith or slandering or belittling the Lotus Sutra. But then the Soka Gakkai also talks about how we chose to make bad causes so that we would be born with the kind of struggles or issues that we are born with or find ourselves with now, so that we can show the power of chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo and practicing Nichiren's Buddhism. And so the point is that we don't have to take a very fatalistic, oh, I'm a bad person perspective on karma. Buddhism is not trying to teach you to hate yourself, to have self-loathing or scolding yourself, that negative self-talk. Rather, we try to just redetermine, self-reflect. Nichiren talks about reflecting seriously. So we can reflect seriously, but we don't have to chastise ourselves and make ourselves feel like we're horrible human beings, because that's not the point. That is my slight little perspective at the end. But you can ignore anything I say. I am not an expert. I just don't want anybody to feel bad if they feel like they've made some mistakes or they've stopped practicing and then they start practicing again and, get all heavy about it. May want to chant some extra daimoku. And I certainly felt like a lot in this Gosho was talking to me directly. And I guess that's what's best about reading the Gosho, when you feel you can take it into your life and practice harder, more focused, with better attitude, whatever, because of study. So I'm so grateful that you are patient in listening to me talk, listening to me read, because that's my opportunity to study together with you. Please feel free to put any comments in the comments below. And I'm really bad about checking them, but I will try to. As you know, if you subscribe, you're not going to be inundated, but you will have access to the past recordings, and you can be notified when a new one comes up. And if you like listening to my voice as I read the Gosho to you and stumble through it at times, feel free to press like and share it with anyone you know who might benefit from hearing the Goshos being read aloud. Thank you so much and have a wonderful 2023.